Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Ali. I'm a doctor turned entrepreneur, and I'm the author of the brand new book, Feel Good Productivity, which is all about how to be more productive in a way that actually feels good. But it's not about time management, it's not about extra to-do lists, and it's not about working harder. What it's about is really that the secret to productivity is joy. The secret to productivity is to find a way to feel good, to experience positive emotions in your work, because if you can do that, you'll have more energy to give to your work and to the other important areas of your life, like your family, your friends, your hobbies, your business, whatever the thing might be. But most of all, when you can actually feel good about the work that you're doing, it doesn't just make you more productive in your work, it also just makes your entire life way better. And that is really the message of Feel Good Productivity. It is finally out. It is being translated into 29 different languages, which is absolutely insane, and it's available all around the world. So in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about the philosophy of Feel Good Productivity, and I want to share why this is an important message that I thought was worth writing a book about. And so if you've got the book already, then firstly, thank you so much for your support. And I hope this will give you a little bit of an intro into why you should consider actually reading it. And if you haven't yet bought the book, then I hope this video might give you an idea of what's in the book so that you can consider buying the book if you would like. Oh, and by the way, I'm currently in the offices of Penguin Random House, which is our UK publisher. And they've given me 500 plus copies of the book that I need to sign because those are going into physical retailers all around the UK, which is pretty cool. Oh, by the way, quick thing. I've just finished filming this video, but I forgot to mention, if you order the book or pre-order the book or anything before the 30th of December 2023, you will get a completely free ticket to an exclusive Feel Good Productivity live annual planning workshop that I'm running on January the 6th, 2024. We'll have several thousand people from all around the world getting together, and I'm going to be facilitating a sort of annual review and reflection process where we're going to be talking through reflecting on 2023 and then planning for 2024 and hopefully figuring out a little bit more about what you want to do with your life. So if you're interested and you get a copy of the book before December the 30th, then you're going to get a ticket to that event, which is exclusively for people who order the book before the 30th of December. So firstly, how did this book come about? Well, it came about because as I was working as a full-time doctor and trying to build my business and my YouTube channel and stuff on the side, this was around 2018, I was finding myself feeling very overwhelmed. You know, when you're working a full-time day job, I was working like 60 hours a week, and I would get home from a normal day of work and I'd feel very drained. I'd feel like I didn't really have any energy left. I'd feel pretty exhausted. And even though I did have some amount of time on the weekends and evenings to work on my business, my YouTube channel, and spend time with my friends and family, I didn't really have the energy to do it. And a few months into my work, I was feeling pretty burned out. I wasn't really enjoying it, and I was kind of painfully struggling to get through the workday and then getting home and just wanting to zonk out on the sofa and just scroll social media or watch TV or something like that. And after a few months of this, I'd realized that actually I've had enough and I want to find a better way to deal with how I'm thinking about work. And so I went on a bit of a rabbit hole around productivity because when I was in medical school for 6 years, one of those years I did a degree in psychology, and I really enjoyed reading studies around the field of positive psychology and reading things around what makes people happier and more fulfilled and more productive and more focused and stuff. And one of the things that I came across, which I then did more research into, is something really interesting that you probably haven't heard of called the broaden and build theory. And the broaden and build theory explains part of the philosophy around feel-good productivity. So the theory behind broaden and build is the idea that when we experience positive emotions in anything, that creates within us a feeling of safety and security, and that translates into broadening our availability of actions, i.e. being more creative, and building cognitive and social resources, i.e. being able to make friends and explore. And the way I think of this is like in caveman times, which is how our brains and minds and stuff evolved. In caveman times, what happens when you're feeling good? When you're feeling good, it means you're safe. It means that things are pretty chill. It means you're well fed. It means you're not under threat by a lion or a tiger or a neighboring tribe or anything like that. And so the theory goes that the way that we've evolved is when we're experiencing positive emotions, that's when our caveman ancestors would decide, you know what, things are pretty chill. I'm going to go out and explore. I'm going to see what are those berries over there. I'm going to see if I can find a new hunting ground or find new resources. I'm going to make friends with the people around me. Now, conversely, when we're experiencing negative emotions, what does that mean? When we're experiencing negative emotions, it means we are stressed and we are under threat in some kind of way. And so negative emotions really narrow a focus and they narrow the number of options we have available to us. It's either fight or flight or freeze. And that is not actually a recipe for a healthy, happy, productive life if it happens too often. Sure, negative emotions every now and then are fine if we're facing an acute stressor or something, but if they happen chronically over the long term, it's a pretty grim way to live, and it's very draining and very not fun, and also makes us very unproductive. And so when I discovered this broaden and build theory of positive emotions, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Could I apply this to my work? is the idea that if I were to be able to experience more positive emotions, if I were to feel good about the work I'm doing, in theory, that would make me more productive and more creative and less stressed. And we all kind of know this to be true anyway, even without a scientific theory. It's like if you think about when have been the times where you felt the most productive, when have been the times where you feel like you've been most creative and done your best work, it probably hasn't been when you've been up against a deadline and you've been grinding really hard and you haven't had enough sleep. It's probably been a time where you were feeling good. You found a way to enjoy the thing that you were doing. And when we're having fun with stuff, productivity just magically takes care of itself. So that's really the secret, and that is what this book is basically about. It's about how do you find ways to make whatever you're doing feel more good? How do you find ways to experience more positive emotions with whatever you're doing? And to put it simply, really, it's how do you have more fun in your work? Because if you're having fun, you become more productive, you're more creative, you're less stressed, and you have more energy to give to the other important areas of your life as well. And now the book is actually split into 3 parts. And I'm going to tell you about the 3 parts so you can decide, is this the sort of thing that you might vibe with? And if you're a fan of this channel or you care about productivity or improving your life in any way, I really hope it will be. So part 1 is called Energize, and it is about the 3 energizers that we can incorporate into any of our work, however boring it might be, to just make it more fun, more enjoyable, more energizing. And those energizers conveniently start with the letter P. They are play, power, and people. Now let's talk a little bit about play. Now play is a really underrated productivity tactic. There's a great quote from Naval Ravikant, which is, find the thing that feels like play to you, but looks like work to other people, because that is where you're going to have a huge competitive advantage. But this isn't just about, hey, just do things that are automatically fun, because we all have to do things that we don't enjoy some of the time. Not everything is play by default, but actually changing the way that we approach our work to turn it into a more playful thing can massively boost our productivity and just improve the rest of our life as well. And the opening story in the book is the story of Professor Richard Feynman, who was a really famous physicist back in the day and who won the Nobel Prize. But there was a period of time early in Feynman's life where, after World War II, his wife had died and he was a professor and he was like really successful, but he was feeling really burned out by physics and he just didn't enjoy it anymore. And, you hear in his autobiography where he's talking about how it just sort of lost meaning and he wasn't really feeling it. And eventually one day he's at the Cornell University cafeteria and he just sees a student chucking a plate up and down in the air. And he notices that the logo, the Cornell University logo on the plate, is spinning at a different rate compared to the plate itself. And his first thought is, it doesn't really matter. But then he kind of remembers that the reason he got so good at physics, the reason he was so productive, is because he enjoyed it. He would play with physics. And he realized that he'd, over time, descended it into this mode of taking his physics just too seriously. And he realized he should try and inject the play back into it. And so he decided he was going to be like, screw it. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know it's totally meaningless, but I'm just going to try and figure out the equations of how this plate is wobbling. And that playful approach got his love of physics back, and he started enjoying it more. And he started writing about these equations, and those equations actually led him to formulate the theory of electrodynamics or whatever it was that actually helped him win the Nobel Prize a few years later. And so whether or not you read the book, even if you don't read the book, honestly, if there's one thing you take away from this video and what I want people to take away from the book, is really just the title, Feel Good Productivity. The reason it's called Feel Good Productivity is because we all want productivity that actually feels good, but also, conversely, feeling good is actually the method, the path to productivity. If you can find a way to approach your work in the spirit of play, if you can find a way to make it just a little bit more fun, then you're just going to automatically be more productive at the work, but you'll also realize that it's not about the work itself. It's also just going to bleed into the rest of your life, and you'll have a way better time just living. So that's the first chapter. The first chapter is about play, and basically in each chapter, we've got 3 main principles and 6 experiments that you can try out in your life. And this is the second key message that I would love people to take away from the book. In the book in total, there are 54 actionable experiments. Now, that's quite a lot, but the reason I'm calling them experiments is because I think productivity is a pretty personal thing. Like, as is life advice generally, I don't think any of us should really take at face value anything that someone else recommends us to do. We should run experiments and try it out for ourselves and see if it actually works for us. And so these 54 different experiments in the book, these are all things that you can try out in your life, and they're practical, actionable ways to make whatever you're doing feel more good, to help you be more productive, to help you combat procrastination, to help you avoid burnout. But you want to try some of them in your life, and you want to see, does this actually work for me? And if it does, you keep it. And if it doesn't, that's okay. You've tried the experiment. The experiment hasn't worked, but that's a data point in itself, and you can move on to the next one. Anyway, so that was the first chapter. The first chapter was play. The second chapter is power. Power is basically, can you find a way to approach your work with more of a feeling of power, like personal empowerment? And there's 6 different experiments. We talk about the studies around intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. What is it that makes us feel as if our work is worth doing by itself? What are the things that allow us to feel that sense of empowerment, that sense of leveling up in our work? How do we feel more confident about the things that we're doing? And again, this is not about putting shit in your calendar. It's not about having a better system of managing your to-do list. It's not about your Notion workspace. It's about these things that apply to every single thing that we do, whether it's in our day job or our side hustle, or even the random admin we have to do on the side. If you can approach it with a sense of play and power and incorporating people into it, it will just feel way better and you will just be more productive. But as I keep on saying throughout this video, you're also going to have a way happier and healthier life as well. And then we come to people. So we've all had that experience where there are some people that we hang out with who seem to drain our energy when we spend time with them. And we've all probably had that experience that there are some people that we spend time with who really energize us. And there's this concept in psychology called relational energy, which is the energy you get from interactions with other people. And in the third chapter, People, we talk about how you can get more of this in your life and how you can give more of it to others as well. One of the key things, again, if you don't want to read the book, if there's just one message I would leave you with, it's the idea of service. Whatever you're doing, if you're struggling with productivity in that thing, if you're struggling with procrastination, usually, or very often, it's because you're very focused on yourself and not thinking enough about how your work could be helping someone else. Now, one of the quirks of human motivation, which is a very good thing, is that we will often do more for other people than we will for ourselves. And when we feel as if the work we're doing has value and purpose and meaning to someone else, it makes us feel way better about the work as well. Another key thing you can take away is just finding a way to work with other people. Everything is more fun when you do it with friends. I discovered this at university. I rediscovered it when I was working as a doctor and when trying to do this YouTube stuff, that humans are social creatures. We don't really thrive when we're sitting in a library or in a room or in an office on our own. We thrive when we are around other people. This is why I personally love going to coffee shops and co-working spaces. And I found, at least for me, when I run that experiment, every single thing that I do feels more productive and more creative and less stressful. And I also have more fun along the way when I'm finding a way to work with other people. So that is part one. Part one is about the 3 energizers. It's quite a lot of stuff. There are 18 total experiments in part 1. And honestly, if even one of the 18 experiments works, then it will have been worth the price of the book and the time you would have spent reading it, because all it takes, the whole point of these nonfiction books is that all it takes is one idea to really change your life. If there's just one idea you take away from this, it's taken me 3.5 years to work on this. We've had 3 professional editors work on it. We've had 2 researchers work on it. All of that work into a very cheap-ass book that is also available on Audible. I've narrated the audiobook version. It's available on ebook. If all you take away from it is just one idea, one philosophy, one framework, one thing that changes the way you approach your work, it'll massively boost your productivity, which is worth way more than the price of the book and the time you spent reading it, but it will also just improve your life in general. So that was part 1, Energize. Next, we go on to part 2, which is called Unblock. And part 2 is basically all about how do we beat the problem of procrastination and distraction. So even when we found a way to make our work feel good, there are these 3 blockers that can get in the way. And those 3 blockers are, firstly, uncertainty, secondly, fear, and thirdly, inertia. So, uncertainty. Uncertainty is basically when the thing that you're trying to do is undefined in some kind of way. And so in this chapter, we talk about getting clarity, how clarity is the antidote to procrastination. When you know exactly what you're actually trying to do, when you have a clear sense of the destination you're going for and how you're going to get there, it becomes way easier to not procrastinate and not get distracted. And then there's a bunch of practical strategies in the book for doing that. Then chapter 5 is all about fear, the fear that holds us back from starting things and from living our best life. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of judgment from other people, self-doubt. And again, there's a bunch of strategies in that chapter of how to have the courage to overcome this fear. And we've got stories from Abdaal and some cool scientific studies. There's this cool thing called the Batman effect. If maybe you want to put yourself out there in some way, but you haven't because you've been afraid of something or other, then hopefully there are some practical strategies in the book to help with that. And the final thing is inertia. This is where the idea of discipline comes in. So one of the things that I don't like about the self-help world these days is that it's very focused on discipline and grit and willpower and just sort of powering through and hustling a bit harder, and I'll just wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go for a run even when you don't feel like it.
It never gets any easier. You gotta get harder.
That works for some people, but for most of us, discipline is like trying to push a boulder up the hill all the time, and it's pretty exhausting. Whereas if we can find a way to make our work feel good and actually enjoy the process, that's like the hill going downhill. And then it's just pushing a boulder down the hill, which is way more energizing or way more fun and a lot less stressful. But the thing is, everything that we do does have a little hump. It takes some activation energy to get started with anything, and this is why we procrastinate. It takes me some energy to get to the gym, but once I'm at the gym, then I can sustain my workout through finding a way to feel good. And this is where discipline actually does come in. Discipline is useful for getting started with something, but it's not very good for trying to sustain something. And so in the inertia chapter, we talk about a bunch of practical ways to harness like micro doses of discipline and willpower to be able to get started with a task, because procrastination generally is a problem with getting started, because Newton's law of inertia, once you've gotten started with something, as you've probably experienced in your life, it's a lot easier to actually keep going with it. So those are the middle 3 chapters of the book. Those are all Unblock. And then the final section of the book is called Sustain. And this is all about how do we make our feel-good productivity actually sustainable? Because again, there's no point in doing something if it's just going to burn you out and make you feel absolutely miserable. And also, most of the gains from whatever you do, whether it's in your health or relationships or in your work or in your side hustle or anything, the gains come from consistent effort that's compounded over time. And so finding a way to make a productivity sustainable is a ridiculously important part of living a healthy, happy, productive life, which is what we're all about on this channel. So we've got basically 3 chapters, which are all about different strategies that you can use to overcome the 3 different types of burnout. So chapter 7 is titled Conserve, and that's all about how to overcome overexertion burnout, which is the sort of burnout that we all suffer with when we are simply trying to do too much. And so the chapter talks about a few strategies you can do to take things off your plate and to take breaks appropriately and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, while I was reading, this was the final part of the book is the one that, these days I need to take the advice more of, because I was recording the audiobook for this a few months ago, and part 1 and 2, Energize and Unblock, I think I'm pretty good at applying those to my own life. That's a big part of why I've been able to be so productive and build this big business and have loads of fun along the way, because I've incorporated the energizers and I've gotten rid of the blockers for most of the things that I have to do. But one thing that I continue to struggle with is this sustain piece. Because I enjoy my work so much, it's just so easy for me to burn myself out by just doing too much of it. And so as I was recording the audiobook, I was kind of thinking, I really should take my own advice for this. Anyway, so chapter 7 is titled Conserve, and that's all about how to overcome overexertion burnout. Chapter 8 is called Recharge, and it's all about the evidence-based strategies that we can use to recharge our energy to avoid depletion burnout. And then chapter 9 is a really fun chapter that's called Align, which is all about how we can overcome misalignment burnout, which is the sort of burnout we feel when the stuff that we're doing doesn't feel like it's actually aligned with the direction that we want to go in our lives. And so the beta readers, the people who have read the book, a lot of them have commented that chapter 9 has been their favorite part, but you kind of need to get through the rest of the book and understand the philosophy to get to chapter 9, because it's a bit heavy otherwise. But chapter 9 essentially encourages you to think about where you actually want to go in your life, because the thing with productivity is, it's all well and good trying to be more productive and more efficient at whatever you're doing. But if you're working on the wrong stuff, then a lot of that productivity is wasted effort, because you're just working on the wrong things. So that was a bit of a rundown on what this book is actually about. Any of that vibes with you and you've not yet got yourself a copy, I would love it if you can get yourself a copy. It's available in hardback, it's available in Kindle or ebook, it's available in audiobook. I have narrated the audiobook, and so that's kind of fun if you like my voice for whatever reason. And really, I just wanted to say thank you. Because of you supporting this channel for however long you've been supporting the channel, I've been able to land a book deal with 2 huge publishers, Penguin in the UK and Macmillan in the US and North America. I literally cannot believe that this book is already being translated into 29 different languages. It's completely absurd, and it's available all around the world. And so if there is even one thing that you can take away from this that would actually change the way you approach your work, I genuinely think that has the power to change your life. And so I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to write the book. And I learned so much in the process of writing this myself, because I was pretty productive and I sort of been dabbling with this stuff for a while. But it was when doing the research for the book that I really solidified my own philosophy of productivity, that I came up with this whole concept of feel-good productivity. It's not really that new, but most people in the self-help world don't really talk about it because it seems unfashionable or it seems a bit frivolous or whatever. But there's genuinely a ton of science-backed stuff in here that can teach you that, and this thing that we all intuitively know to be true, that when you find a way to make your work feel good, when you can find a way to make it more fun, productivity just automatically takes care of itself, and you don't need to try so hard. You don't need to work so hard with to-do lists and discipline and grit and all of the fun stuff that we love talking about here on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for the opportunity to write this book for you guys. Catch you later. Bye.